1-6 involves solving a formula for a single variable. And so we've given you the definition here for a formula. A formula is an equation that states a rule for a relationship among quantities. And then a literal equation is an equation with two or more variables. So a very simple literal equation would be rate times time equals distance. And we're going to try to solve an equation like this for either r or t or d. So if I were to solve this equation for r, we would want to get r by itself, so we would want to undo multiplying by t by dividing both sides by t. That would give us a new equation of r equals d over t. So that equation is now solved for r. We could take the same equation but solve it for t. So to undo multiplying by r, we would divide by r, which would give us the equation t equals d over r. So you've got three equations, the original, this one, and this one, all using the same formula, but all solve for a different variable. So when you're solving for a variable, there are three things that you need to look for. First, locate the variable that you need to solve for. That means that you want to get that variable on one side of the equation with a coefficient of 1. Then you need to identify the operations that are occurring to this variable and do the inverse operations to isolate that variable. So use your algebra. It's just, you're going to have weird answers because your answers aren't going to be 2 or -5. They're going to have variables in them. So let's look to see what that looks like. Whoops. That's the end on that slide. So for this one, it says in 2004, Ernst van Dijk won the wheelchair race of the Boston Marathon with a time of about 1.3 hours. So you've been given T. The race was 26.2 miles long. Well, that would be your distance. What was his average speed? Well, average speed is going to be, whoops, let me get a different color. Average speed here would represent r, a rate. So they want you to use the formula distance equals rate times time, the one that we were just talking about, and round your answer to the nearest tenth. So we're going to start with a formula. D equals rate times time, and we're going to plug into that formula what we know. Well, we were told that the distance was 26.2 miles. So we're replacing D with that, equals, we don't know our rate, but we know our time is 1.3 hours. So we want to solve this equation for r. So to do that, r is currently being multiplied by 1.3. So to undo that, we're going to divide by 1.3 hours to both sides. So the 1.3 hours cancels. We're left with an r on the right. And then, let me do that on my calculator. So we've got 26.2 divided by 1.3. So the answer is 20.1538, but they want it rounded to the nearest tenth. So since it's 20.15, 5 follows the 1, it rounds the 1 up to a 2. So we get approximately 20.2, and then it's in miles per hour. So therefore, his average rate is 20.2 miles per hour. Example 2, excuse me, you're given the formula for a Fahrenheit temperature in terms of degrees Celsius. So note that this formula is solved for F, but we want to solve it for C. There's a variety of ways that you could go about it, but we're going to do it the following way. So I would suggest, because this is the most common way to see it done, if I want to get this variable, because I'm solving for c, so I got to get that term on one side by itself, we need to get rid of plus 32. So we're going to subtract 32 from both sides. So we end up with f minus 32 on the left equals, and then 9/5 c on the right. So now that I have the variable term on one side by itself, I need to do something about this fractional coefficient. Well, we've learned that when you have a fractional coefficient, you can multiply by its reciprocal and you get 1. So what you do on one side, you have to do to the entire other side. So we're going to multiply this side by 5/9 as well. And I would suggest, I'm going to put this over 1, I would suggest that you write your answer so it looks like this. 5 times f minus 32, all divided by 9 times 1 is 9, and that equals c. So there's a variety of answers you could have for this. This is just one of them. Then in example 3, it says the formula for a person's typing speed is s equals w minus 10e over m, where s is your speed in words per minute, w is your number of words typed, e is the number of errors, and m is the number of minutes typing. So we're solving for w. So we want to get that on one side by itself. Well, this is currently imprisoned inside of a fraction. So to undo the fraction, we need to multiply by the denominator. So the denominator is m. So we're going to multiply this side by m over 1 and this side by m. So that leaves us with ms or sm equals, the m's here cancel, and you have w minus 10e. So keep remembering we're solving for w, so I want to get that on one side by itself. So we have to get rid of minus 10e. So the opposite is to add 10e. So the 10e's cancel. And these are not like terms, so you can't really combine them. So it looks like this, ms plus 10e equals w. And we've finally gotten w on one side by itself with a coefficient of 1. So there's our solution. Example 4. This time we're solving for m. So we want to get that on one side by itself. So we want to get rid of a minus n. So add n to both sides. The n's cancel. And you have an m on the left. And then the 5 and the n are not like terms, so you can't really combine them. So it looks like 5 plus n or n plus 5. And since we have solved for positive 1m, there is our solution. Example 5, we're solving for k. Well, just like some of the previous problems, the variable that we're solving for is imprisoned in a fraction. So we have to get rid of that fraction by multiplying both sides by the denominator. The denominator in this case is k. So we're going to multiply this side by k over 1 and this side by k. So the k's here cancel and we're left with m equals x times k. Since I'm solving for k, I need to undo multiplication by x. So we're going to divide both sides by x. The x's cancel and we have m over x is equal to k. And this is your homework for today.